COVID-19 began as a medical emergency, but it didn't stop there. The pandemic has led to the greatest global economic crisis since the Great Depression. And this crisis is magnifying inequality. Early estimates suggest that women are nearly twice as likely to lose their jobs as men. And low-income women are the most at risk, especially those in low-income countries. Think of the garment worker whose factory has shut down because global demand for new clothes has stalled. Or the woman who sells food in an outdoor and has had to close down her shop because no one is gathering there anymore. Yet local banks don't usually give loans to women, so they often have to turn to friends and family for money if they want to start a business. They usually work 2 jobs, one that pays them and one that doesn't: cooking, cleaning, and caring for their families. Many of these women have struggled for years to put their lives and their families on solid economic ground. But then a virus started spreading around the world, and now those years of hard work and sacrifice are being completely erased. And this is where leaders can and must step in. This year, more than 1 billion people worldwide will receive money from their governments to meet their basic needs amid COVID-19's economic fallout. And these emergency cash transfers are a good way to prevent this pandemic from locking women into poverty. But here's the challenge. Too often, the cash doesn't end up in the women's pockets, all because they are not identified as the head of the household. But we can reach these women, and I want to introduce you to someone who is helping reach them in India.
I think it's time that the world moved from the concept of household income to individual income, and I think that's where the Indian government has done a brilliant job. Where money was directly credited into women's bank accounts, women tend to be more prudent spenders, and they're also cautious with the money. So overall, I think the combination of the money getting transferred into their accounts provided them with a sense of financial independence and a transfer of social power.
When policymakers think about who they're designing cash transfer programs for, I hope they remember the women it helps. I also hope they keep this in mind. These cash transfers don't only help the women who receive them, the benefit is much bigger than that. That's because when women have money, they tend to spend it on their children and communities. So increasing a woman's economic power creates a virtuous cycle. When a woman has money, she puts money into the pockets of more women, and the cycle repeats itself. If we empower women economically right now with measures like cash transfers, addressing unpaid care, and other policies, then we could create as many as 230 million new jobs. And every single one of those workers would be getting paychecks, all because of our investment in women. So as the world confronts a long-term global economic recovery, one solution must be at the center: making sure women have economic power, that they have money in their pocket and the ability to spend it in a way that's best for them and their families.
But they said love don't fail if you try it. I knew in my heart I would succeed. When times get hard, gotta keep on fighting. All these battles, yes, they make the best of me.
The world has changed in ways that were unimaginable a year ago. The challenges facing our society, our economy, and our planet may seem endless, but so are the possibilities. This is a reset moment. At MasterCard, we see a future where people can reach their full potential, where economic growth is inclusive, and where the planet thrives. By applying the full strength of our resources and network, we are working to advance digital inclusion. That means bringing 1 billion people into the digital economy by 2025, including 50 million small businesses, with support for 25 million women entrepreneurs. We believe racial and social equality empower everyone to reach their full potential. To help level the playing field, we're clearing roadblocks for Black business owners to build and grow thriving businesses. Because acceptance matters, we now offer the True Name Card, which allows transgender and gender nonconforming account holders to put their true selves forward. We're also working to build a future where communities flourish and the planet thrives. Together with our partners, we have pledged to plant 100 million trees over 5 years to help address the urgent climate crisis. In our deeply interconnected world, we're at our best when we face challenges together. And that's why we're working to build a stronger, more resilient, more inclusive digital economy that benefits everyone, everywhere.
My name is Elsiwan Horam. I'm 36 years old and I'm running my small shop. My business is much better.
I learned that as a business person, if I want to become a successful person, I'm coachable and determined.
After the financial education, I know the right source to get the money with low interest. Right now I'm struggling hard, but then in 5 years, I'm sure I'm going to build up a big food processing unit.
Taksom bala kaujai ai khurai konjam lekai dagini ai ahambada phak amina sajarami training chatla matung dagidi ai products kauna che makhan chaba bag chare button chare fine cover che aina saba dagidi order mina matang tawire.
Before I attend that training, I didn't maintain records for budget, but after that I started maintaining records for monthly. I started writing monthly expenditure and monthly income. I used to keep the records like that.
ज़िंदगी इन पहाड़ों की जैसी है ना, क्या पता कौन सा मोड़ कहाँ ले जाए। मेरा नाम तनुजा है और मैं सिरपुर गांव की रहने वाली हूँ। पापा डेली लेबर का काम करते थे। घर में मम्मी, दादा दादी और छोटा भाई रहता है। 6 का परिवार और कमाने वाला सिर्फ 1। हर दिन मैं घर के काम करके स्कूल जाती थी और फिर लौट के खुद की पढ़ाई। मुझे ज़िंदगी में कुछ बनना था और फैमिली ने हमेशा मेरा सपोर्ट किया किसी भी हालात में। 12th के बाद मेरी फ्रेंड ने मुझे स्वतंत्र प्रोग्राम के बारे में बताया। पता चला वहाँ मेरे जैसे स्टूडेंट्स की करियर ट्रेनिंग होती है। वहाँ मैंने होटल मैनेजमेंट की ट्रेनिंग ली और मैं यूँ निकल पड़ी, पीछे मुड़ने का नाम ही नहीं लिया। और सिरपुर भी बदल रहा है। लड़कियां करियर के बारे में सोचने लगी हैं। आज मैं होटल के फ्रंट ऑफिस का काम करती हूँ। आगे जाके जनरल मैनेजर भी बन जाऊंगी, पक्की बात है। मम्मी पापा ने कभी साथ नहीं छोड़ा और ना ही छोड़ेंगे।
अभी तो सिर्फ स्टार्ट किया है, पिक्चर तो पूरी बाकी है।
Situation across Delhi continues to be grim as pollution levels remain sky high. Delhi Heights woke up to another morning of dense smog. However,
winter is my favorite time to visit Delhi. However, in recent years, these months have seen a sharp spike in air pollution. As we're driving around the city, you can actually see the smog. I think everybody realizes that this is becoming a problem and it needs to be addressed. But change is happening in India. How we tackle environmental issues is taking center stage. To find out more, I'm meeting Tarun Balram, who is heading the Sustainable Finance Priorities for HSBC India.
So the government has made strong commitments to reduce carbon emissions. 40% of the installed capacity by 2030 will come from non-fossil fuel-based energy sources. So our priorities are to be a leading bank in the sustainable finance space, integrating climate risk into the way we work. For a bank like ours, which has a full service platform in India and can cater to the needs of a client in this sector across the spectrum, it's a great opportunity.
I'm here to visit a client that is part of that change.
Energy is extremely important for success of India's transition from emerging market to a developed market. Now, when you look at the different sources India has available, it's by definition solar is the most promising because it's available everywhere and you don't have to pay anyone for using sunshine.
We are on the rooftop in the middle of Delhi, which is one of Azure's rooftop solar capacity installation. This is one of their smallest installations with a capacity of about 1.6 megawatts, which can power about 400 to 500 homes. So we issued Azure's first green bond in 2017 of $500 million. What the green bond did was allowing them access to capital, which could help them grow their portfolio. So HSBC has primarily given a lot of these renewable companies access to large pool of international investors who want to invest in projects which make a difference to the community at a cost which makes sense to the company and as well as returns which make sense to the investors.
We're a 10-year-old company and today we are a portfolio of 3,000 megawatts. We think we can do 10,000 in 20 years. Ultimately, we want to make sure that we are providing clean, low-cost energy for Indian consumers and helping the government meet its objectives on socially inclusive growth through clean energy.
It is inspiring to see change in action. Companies like Azure prove that clean power is possible, and it makes me proud that HSBC is part of it.
आप लोग जब भी रिक्शा चलाओ तो 3 बातों का ध्यान रखना चाहिए। पहली बात रेस, दूसरी बात ब्रेक और तीसरी बात ट्रैफिक नियम। मना ही किया था घर में, परिवार वालों ने तो मना किया था कि ये तो ना आदमियों का काम है, तो आदमी करते हैं रिक्शा चलाने का काम।
शुरू से मेरे को डाउट था कि बाहर कैसे निकल पाएगी, जो साइकिल ही नहीं चला पाती वो बाहर ये रिक्शा कैसे चलाएगी।
फिर मैं तो ना मैंने कहा कि नहीं अब तो मैं करूँगी, मेरे को अच्छा लगा ये काम, तो मैं ना हर जगह से दूसरे देशों से हम लोग आते हैं हमारे यहाँ देखने, तो हमको जयपुर की चीज़ें दिखाते हैं उनको, और उनसे बात करना अच्छा लगता है, उन्हें अच्छा लगता है। और एक महिला रिक्शा चला रही है, हमसे टूरिस्ट खुश होके जाते हैं। चाबी लगाओ इसमें, चाबी लगाओ इसमें, ताला खोलो। खाली पड़ा है ना रोड, तो थोड़ा रेस खोल के और फिर अपन को सीधे हाथ पे रहता है, इंडिकेटर देना है। इससे मौका, मैं तो खुद ड्राइवर बनी हुई हूँ, पर मैं दूसरी महिलाओं को भी इसमें ट्रेनर बन के उनको सिखाती हूँ रिक्शा। और आमदनी तो मेरी बढ़ी है इसमें, और मैं इसमें ना शेयर भी खरीदा है, जो मैं इस कंपनी की हिस्सेदार बनी हूँ। मैं इसमें मेरी आमदनी बढ़ी है, जो मेरे घर में मतलब मेरे घर में पहले कम थी, अब ज़्यादा आमदनी होती है क्योंकि मैं भी कमाती हूँ।
कि लेडीज अच्छे से अच्छा कमाए, अपन यही चाहते हैं अपनी लेडीज आगे बढ़े,
पति का साथ हो, बच्चों को अपन कुछ भी दे सकते हैं ऐसे। बदलाव आया में आत्मनिर्भरता, मतलब आत्मविश्वास पैदा हुआ मेरे में। पहले कुछ नहीं जानती थी, यहाँ तक कि मैं अपने पिछले वाली गली के लोगों को भी नहीं जानती थी।
होटलों के बारे में भी, मार्केट के बारे में भी ये बदलाव देगा मैंने बाद में, और बोलने का, चालने का, ये सब चेंज हो गया है।
कैसा लगा? अच्छा लगा ना?
हाँ, बहुत अच्छा है चला।
A bank that you can bank on. AU franchise has been fueling the aspirations of low and middle income people since the last 25 years. With more than 18 lakh customers across 13 states and 2 union territory. Today, the bank has built a strong portfolio of 28 products. Standing tall on the strong pillars of financial inclusion and digital banking, AU Bank's USPs are: AU has built a strong franchise clocking impressive numbers. With a focus to enable financial inclusion in India. Recipient of multiple international and national awards. AU Small Finance Bank is your new age bank, bringing ease of banking at your fingertips. AU Bank, चलो आगे बढ़ें।
जिंदगी के कई मौसम अनुभव किया मैंने। हालात बदले, लोग बदले, अगर कुछ नहीं बदला तो बाबूजी की सिखाई हुई एक बात, वो कहते थे जब नींव मजबूत हो तो फिर चाहे वक्त के उतार चढ़ाव कैसे भी हो, हम उनका डट कर सामना करने में सक्षम होंगे। बिल्कुल इस पेड़ की तरह ऐसा ही एक अटूट रिश्ता जोड़ता है आपके साथ IDFC फर्स्ट बैंक। विश्वास, पारदर्शिता और सच्चाई का, क्योंकि इनको आपकी सफलता में अपनी जीत दिखती। मैं तो जुड़ चुका हूं इनके साथ। आप भी जुड़ जाइए ना। IFI First Bank, always you first.
The global pandemic is challenging the entire world, but it hits the poor worst of all. Our clients live in emerging markets where they often can't work from home, they often can't social distance, there's often no running water, and the public health infrastructure may be weak on a good day. All of that, the pandemic is overrunning, and so the impact on the poor has been enormous. Beyond the pandemic, I think we're still tackling enormous issues like climate change, gender inequality, data and data protection, and of course consumer protection. And consumer protection is changing a lot because of the use of digital technologies. We are finding and investing and building institutions that leverage those technologies to reach people that have never been reached before.
A bank that you can bank on. AU Franchise has been fueling the aspirations of low and middle income people since the last 25 years. With more than 18 lakh customers across 13 states and 2 union territory. Today the bank has built a strong portfolio of 28 products. Standing tall on the strong pillars of financial inclusion and digital banking, AU Bank's USPs are: AU has built a strong franchise clocking impressive numbers. With a focus to enable financial inclusion in India. Recipient of multiple international and national awards. AU Small Finance Bank is your new age bank, bringing ease of banking at your fingertips. AU Bank, chalo aage badhein.
Presenting 2 new tech initiatives in the retail microfinance sector. Sahyog 2.0 app to ensure data security and efficient services with newly added features like eKYC, geo-tagging and instant credit verification. And cashless payments of EMI via any bank UPI for easy and safe transactions. All this with an aim to enhance last mile efficiency and delivery for the microfinance entrepreneurs.
मुस्काने जो दबी हुई थी चेहरों पर वो खिल गई है अब पैरों पर पंख लगे हैं मंजिलें भी मिल गई है घर घर हम पहुंचे ऐसे जैसे कोई अपना हो जो पूरा ना हो सके अब ना वैसा कोई सपना हो We are a bank of smiles. We are a bank of smiles. We are a bank of smiles. We are a bank of smiles.
COVID-19 began as a medical emergency, but it didn't stop there. The pandemic has led to the greatest global economic crisis since the Great Depression. And this crisis is magnifying inequality. Early estimates suggest that women are nearly twice as likely to lose their jobs as men. And low-income women are the most at risk, especially those in low-income countries. Think of the garment worker whose factory has shut down because global demand for new clothes has stalled. Or the woman who sells food in an outdoor market and has had to close down her shop because no one is gathering there anymore. Yet local banks don't usually give loans to women, so they often have to turn to friends and family for money if they want to start a business. They usually work 2 jobs, one that pays them and one that doesn't: cooking, cleaning, and caring for their families. Many of these women have struggled for years to put their lives and their families on solid economic ground. But then a virus started spreading around the world, and now those years of hard work and sacrifice are being completely erased. And this is where leaders can and must step in. This year, more than 1 billion people worldwide will receive money from their governments to meet their basic needs amid COVID-19's economic fallout. And these emergency cash transfers are a good way to prevent this pandemic from locking women into poverty. But here's the challenge. Too often, the cash doesn't end up in the women's pockets, all because they are not identified as the head of the household. But we can reach these women, and I want to introduce you to someone who is helping reach them in India.
I think it's time that the world moved from the concept of household income to individual income, and I think that's where the Indian government has done a brilliant job. Where money was directly credited into women's bank accounts, women tend to be more prudent spenders, and they're also cautious with the money. So overall, I think the combination of the money getting transferred into their accounts provided them with a sense of financial independence and a transfer of social power.
When policymakers think about who they're designing cash transfer programs for, I hope they remember the women it helps. I also hope they keep this in mind. These cash transfers don't only help the women who receive them, the benefit is much bigger than that. That's because when women have money, they tend to spend it on their children and communities. So increasing a woman's economic power creates a virtuous cycle. When a woman has money, she puts money into the pockets of more women, and the cycle repeats itself. If we empower women economically right now with measures like cash transfers, addressing unpaid care, and other policies, then we could create as many as 230 million new jobs. And every single one of those workers would be getting paychecks, all because of our investment in women. So as the world confronts a long-term global economic recovery, one solution must be at the center: making sure women have economic power, that they have money in their pocket and the ability to spend it in a way that's best for them and their families.
But they said love don't fail if you try it. I knew in my heart I would succeed. When times get hard, gotta keep on fighting. All these battles, yes, they made the best of me. Beautiful.
The world has changed in ways that were unimaginable a year ago. The challenges facing our society, our economy, and our planet may seem endless, but so are the possibilities. This is a reset moment. At MasterCard, we see a future where people can reach their full potential, where economic growth is inclusive, and where the planet thrives. By applying the full strength of our resources and network, we are working to advance digital inclusion. That means bringing 1 billion people into the digital economy by 2025, including 50 million small businesses, with support for 25 million women entrepreneurs. We believe racial and social equality empower everyone to reach their full potential. To help level the playing field, we're clearing roadblocks for Black business owners to build and grow thriving businesses. Because acceptance matters, we now offer the True Name Card, which allows transgender and gender non-conforming account holders to put their true selves forward. We're also working to build a future where communities flourish and the planet thrives. Together with our partners, we have pledged to plant 100 million trees over 5 years to help address the urgent climate crisis. In our deeply interconnected world, we're at our best when we face challenges together. And that's why we're working to build a stronger, more resilient, more inclusive digital economy that benefits everyone, everywhere.
My name is Elsiwan Horam. I'm 36 years old and I'm running my small shop. My business is much better.
I learned that as a business person, if I want to become a successful person, I'm coachable and determined.
After the financial education, I know the right source to get the money with low interest. Right now, I'm struggling hard, but then in 5 years, I'm sure I'm going to build up a big food processing unit.
Taksom bala kaujai ai khurai konjam lekai dagini ai ahambada phak amina sajarami training chatla matung dagidi ai products kauna che makhan saba bag sare button sare fine cover che aina saba dagidi order mina matang tawire.
Before I attend that training, I didn't maintain records for budget, but after that I started maintaining records for monthly. I started writing monthly expenditure and monthly income. I used to keep the records like that.
जिंदगी इन पहाड़ों की जैसी है ना, क्या पता कौन सा मोड़ कहाँ ले जाए। मेरा नाम तनुजा है और मैं सिरपुर गांव की रहने वाली हूँ। पापा डेली लेबर का काम करते थे। घर में मम्मी, दादा दादी और छोटा भाई रहता है। 6 का परिवार और कमाने वाला सिर्फ एक। हर दिन मैं घर के काम करके स्कूल जाती थी और फिर लौट के खुद की पढ़ाई। मुझे ज़िंदगी में कुछ बनना था और फैमिली ने हमेशा मेरा सपोर्ट किया, किसी भी हालात में। 12th के बाद मेरी फ्रेंड ने मुझे स्वतंत्र प्रोग्राम के बारे में बताया। पता चला वहाँ मेरे जैसे स्टूडेंट्स की करियर ट्रेनिंग होती है। वहाँ मैंने होटल मैनेजमेंट की ट्रेनिंग ली और मैं यूँ निकल पड़ी, पीछे मुड़ने का नाम ही नहीं लिया। और सिरपुर भी बदल रहा है। लड़कियां करियर के बारे में सोचने लगी हैं। आज मैं होटल के फ्रंट ऑफिस का काम करती हूँ। आगे जाके जनरल मैनेजर भी बन जाऊंगी, पक्की बात है। मम्मी पापा ने कभी साथ नहीं छोड़ा और ना ही छोड़ेंगे।
अभी तो सिर्फ स्टार्ट किया है, पिक्चर तो पूरी बाकी है।
Situation across Delhi continues to be grim as pollution levels remain sky high. Delhi Heights woke up to another morning of dense smog. However,
Winter is my favorite time to visit.
So I have to speak in 5-6 languages here. I think all the partners are from different parts of the country. The journey of Ananya, I can't talk without touching the journey of FWWB. Friends of Women's Soul Banking, when we started 30 years back, so June only, 30 years back, 11 students said that we will work even though we are an affiliate of Women's Soul Banking, we will concentrate on low-income household women. And of course, the self-employed women, they are forming 80 to 90% of the workforce in India. So they don't have access to finance. So we have to work for that. I still remember that we shared the space with old Seva. I don't know how many of you had seen the Seva. And
graciously Seva Bank had given a space for us, even though it was a storeroom. That is where Friends of Women's World Banking started. And I still remember the first donor when they came. So I was doing the administrative work as well as running the organization. There were only 2 people. So I still remember Kathy Sridhar. I could see, she said that Kathy Sridhar is the person who can give you some money to start the work. So I could see Kathy Sridhar coming, the head and then the nose and this thing. So I was wondering how she looked like it. And I think the first set of trainings we did with women on collectivization and access to finance, SG was coming up that time, was with a grant that a lady from United States gave us. So throughout the history of FWWB, nurturing was done by different women. And yesterday I was telling you, the culmination and recognition of Indian financial sector happened in the place where we had a celebration yesterday. So that is where the meeting, we had an audacity called Vimal Jalan 11. And all the CMDs of the banks came because Vimal Jalan was coming. So we told everybody, and then that is the place where with Women's World Banking we started recognizing the fact that even though there were only 14 organizations which were working with financial sector, have to come, and the idea about Sadhan was born there. So Sadhan actually owes its origin to Ahmedabad. So, and the next meeting we had was in Seva Bank, and then we decided to set up Sadhan. So as Ilaben says, it is the women finance capital of India, because Seva was there, and Friends of Women's World Banking, which was working with partners like you, was there. And we were actually borrowing money from formal financial sector and repaying money like the way our customers were doing it, we were also repaying money on time. Then we believed in collectives and cooperatives, but somehow there was a change because the growth was much higher, and then people have to expand, and then cooperative laws were different. It's a state subject. So the microfinance sector emerged. So the first time when we were working, all of them were development institutions. And it is only thanks to the regulation that has come from RBI, then we became MFI, NBFC MFIs. But I was sharing with some of the partners, the debate was very hot in those days when they were in the development mode. So we used to discuss, okay, this is we have to work with migrants, and we have to work with Dalits, and then we have to work with what kind of products and services we have to do. That debate I miss now, because the kind of a debate that used to happen, and people used to spend lots of time on that, it doesn't happen. Now I feel that it is how to raise money, and then who are the investors, and then whether they are social investors or not, and what do they expect, then it stops with that. So maybe that is the way things grow. But I still feel that it is important for Ananya, which has started working with women collectives, and then it inherited the philosophy of FWWB. The debate should come forward. I think it is time for us to discuss, and then quite concerned that the kind of emerging leadership which we saw, again it has gone down. So we have to work out how women can become leaders in managing money, whatever form it is, and how you use them as a kind of instruments in maintaining the repayment rate is very important. So somehow that is disappearing, so I would like to flag it. And regarding the history of Ananya, my board was divided into 2. So one sect said we should not become a NBFC, other said commercial people from the commercial world, they said we have to do. It took us about 2 years to decide whether it's worth setting up Ananya or not. And we had lots of debate on that in the board meeting and all. And ultimately we had decided that is only because our partners are becoming NBFCs. So it is important to play that role. So when we set it up, it was fine. we passed it on, and then none of us were expecting the Andhra crisis, so the crisis came, and it just had a big hit on Ananya, because as you know that Hyderabad was the mecca of microfinance, and then almost 80% of our borrowings were in lettings were in with partners there. So, but it took us about 2-3 years. As an institution, we have decided that first we have to honor the commitment to the lenders. So some of the lenders like Citibank and all wanted the money immediately because they wanted to pull out themselves from Indian microfinance sector. So all the institutions, in spite of having 2 years loan period, we prepaid all the loans, and then we thought it's important for them to have the confidence in microfinance. So, and then of course, some of the bankers who had lent 120 crores and 140 crores and all, they said that you just tell us that you are defaulting, we will just reschedule the loan. So my board, I think I still remember, the surprise came because the board chairman was from SIDBI and he said no. So we said maybe we are right. So we said no for restructuring the loan, and we were the only ones who paid the money on time, and then we honored all those things. But we have to thank the non-AP partners of Ananya that time, who without getting a loan serviced the old loan that was there in their books. So if the money wouldn't have come, we wouldn't have honored the debt to the banks. So about 500 crore we have returned to the banks during the time, and it was always inflow from the partners and then outflow to the banks, and there was nothing left for us to run the organization or acquire new clients or service new loans to our own partners. It went on like that. So, and we realized, and most of us didn't know that running a company is such a tough thing, because it was very easy to do it in a non-profit mode. So we asked, they said that unless you bring in capital, you just can't get out. That time, IDBI chairman, who was ex-chairman of SIDBI, who knew our work very well, IDBI chairman, he said, he took the first plunge and then said that he will give the equity. So, but the only thing is, they say, took it as OCCP. I said, whatever the form you give. And then also match it with a loan. So it helped us to have a kind of a breather to get out. And then Women's World Banking came. And then, of course, Gojo came. So like this, in this kind of a meeting in Vietnam, I happened to sit next to him. I told him, give us money. So he said, it moved very smoothly. So I didn't know that, I didn't take him very seriously, but Gojo is a major investor in Ananya now. And of course the C4, that time it was ICO only, so I didn't know only when this thing. So of our work, of FW's work in agriculture helped us to bring ICO credit. So that is how Ananya grew. Now I think they are getting money from everywhere, and then they kind of bad days are over. So we turned it around and then we left so that they can manage. But I have only one request, Mr. Bhatt. The brand of FWWB was having lots of issues being discussed openly and keeping women at the center of all the services we have provided. I think it is important for Ananya to continue doing that, keeping women at the center, because the microfinance sector, Indian microfinance sector, owes its growth to women's repayment.
COVID-19 began as a medical emergency, but it didn't stop there. The pandemic has led to the greatest global economic crisis since the Great Depression. And this crisis is magnifying inequality. Early estimates suggest that women are nearly twice as likely to lose their jobs as men. And low-income women are the most at risk, especially those in low-income countries. Think of the garment worker whose factory has shut down because global demand for new clothes has stalled. Or the woman who sells food in an outdoor market and has had to close down her shop because no one is gathering there anymore. Yet local banks don't usually give loans to women, so they often have to turn to friends and family for money if they want to start a business. They usually work two jobs, one that pays them and one that doesn't: cooking, cleaning, and caring for their families. Many of these women have struggled for years to put their lives and their families on solid economic ground. But then a virus started spreading around the world, and now those years of hard work and sacrifice are being completely erased. And this is where leaders can and must step in. This year, more than 1 billion people worldwide will receive money from their governments to meet their basic needs amid COVID-19's economic fallout. And these emergency cash transfers are a good way to prevent this pandemic from locking women into poverty. But here's the challenge. Too often, the cash doesn't end up in the women's pockets, all because they are not identified as the head of the household. But we can reach these women, and I want to introduce you to someone who is helping reach them in India.
I think it's time that the world moved from the concept of household income to individual income, and I think that's where the Indian government has done a brilliant job. Where money was directly credited into women's bank accounts, women tend to be more prudent spenders, and they're also cautious with the money. So overall, I think the combination of the money getting transferred into their accounts provided them with a sense of financial independence and a transfer of social power.
When policymakers think about who they're designing cash transfer programs for, I hope they remember the women it helps. I also hope they keep this in mind. These cash transfers don't only help the women who receive them, the benefit is much bigger than that. That's because when women have money, they tend to spend it on their children and communities. So increasing a woman's economic power creates a virtuous cycle. When a woman has money, she puts money into the pockets of more women, and the cycle repeats itself. If we empower women economically right now with measures like cash transfers, addressing unpaid care, and other policies, then we could create as many as 230 million new jobs. And every single one of those workers would be getting paychecks, all because of our investment in women. So as the world confronts a long-term global economic recovery, one solution must be at the center: making sure women have economic power, that they have money in their pocket and the ability to spend it in a way that's best for them and their families.
Good evening, everyone, once again. I have the privilege of welcoming you all again. I have been actually welcoming and introducing a set of esteemed panelists and speakers since morning today. And it's my privilege to be introducing a very special fireside chat this evening. And it's morning for one of the guests. As I had mentioned earlier in my welcome note, that the virtual format has actually provided us the benefit of having experts from outside India to join us. Laura has, of course, joined us in person as well earlier, but we have her today joining this virtual format. Dr. Leora Clapper, lead economist with the Development Research Group at the World Bank. Welcome. Leora is the founder of the global Findex database that measures how adults around the world save, borrow, make payments, and manage risks. Our current research studies are more focused on the impact of digital financial services and particularly focusing on women. Joining her is Dr. Pawan Bakshi, India Lead for Financial Services to the Poor at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. He's a specialist and an advocate for the use of technology to promote financial inclusion, and he focuses on how more efficiently and effectively to deliver digital financial services at scale. Pawan will anchor this conversation with Leora on a very topical theme, financial inclusion in times of COVID, emerging opportunities and risks to 4 decades of progress. I, again, welcome you both, and I will hand over to Pawan. Thank you so much for joining us, and over to you.
Thank you, Radhika. And good morning again, Leora, and welcome to the show. And before we do that, I just wanted to talk about financial inclusion in general, and we'll talk about how things are and how things are going. But I just wanted to highlight that the role of pandemic has exposed a lot of things and accelerated, in my view, including a lot of people who, by chance, for some reason, have been excluded in the past. And we also have understood that the role of transfer of funds to these people who've been excluded in the past and are vulnerable section of society, including poor and rural communities and women, the role of financial services and technology has been immense. Therefore, that's goes and creates the platform for us to talk on what all has been done. And the key here is that while a lot of countries do a lot of stuff, it doesn't get reported as much across the world. And you and the World Bank and your Findex actually changes all of that, because it highlights and brings about stuff, on the forefront. So I'm going to start the first question with you, Leora, asking you what exactly is the Findex? What does it do? How do you, even explain this?
So thank you, and it's really a pleasure. Thank you for the invitation to join you this morning. So I'm a lead economist at the World Bank in the research department in Washington, D.C. And I work on the intersection of both data, policy, and research. And so every 3 years, we collect the Findex data in 150 countries in collaboration with the Gallup World Poll. We measure things like how many people have a bank account, how many people save money for the future, how many use digital payments. And Findex is really special because it's what we call demand-side data. It's collected directly from the users of financial services, and it complements what we call the supply-side data, usually collected by regulators from providers of financial services like banks, MFIs, and fintechs. And so in 2008, the IMF started collecting data on how much money was deposited at banks, how many bank accounts had ever been opened, in, say, Turkey. But this was a black box of information. We didn't know how many wealthy adults had accounts as compared to poor accounts. And we certainly didn't know that men in Turkey were almost 30 percentage points more likely than women to have an account. And so since 2011, with generous funding from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and partnership with Gallup, we ask over 150,000 adults around the world about their financial behavior. And so we update the data every 3 years. And today, the Findex questionnaire has a focus on digital payments, such as how people use their phones and the internet to purchase things in stores and online, receive wages and government payments, and pay their bills.
This is great, Leora. Thanks so much for this quick update, on a background, because a whole lot of people actually use the Findex, but they didn't know the origins of this and how to utilize this in a better way. Hopefully, I do believe it'll lead to high usage of the database itself. On the flip side of this, you mentioned about the poor people and how they use their phones and all. Help us understand historically who have been the unbanked populations and what does it actually mean?
So we identify an unbanked person as someone who doesn't have a bank account or mobile money account. So being unbanked overlaps with other forms of inequality. Women and poor adults, rural adults, for example, are more likely not to have an account. This index data finds that we still have a long way to go. In 2017, which is the latest available data, 1.7 billion adults remained unbanked, and many adults who have an account don't use them. And so to achieve the development goals, it's important for people to use their accounts. So for example, in 2017, the data found that in India, half of all accounts had never been used for a single deposit or withdrawal. And I'll add, this is one of the pieces of information that we're most excited about to get updated data because of the tremendous progress we believe India has made in increasing usage of these accounts. But if you're unbanked or unable to use your account because the bank's too far away or small transactions are too expensive, or you don't trust the bank to keep your money safe, it's much harder to save money for the future or handle any financial emergencies or invest in business or educational opportunities. You can do these things using cash, but it's much more difficult. And so we've really reached a turning point in global financial inclusion. Most of the easily banked people have been reached. The 30% of adults globally, that 20% in India, who are still unbanked will be much harder to reach. It won't be easy, but we really believe that fintech has the potential to provide more affordable and convenient financial services to improve people's lives and make it easier to achieve economic development. So I believe that if you want to fix global poverty, you need to help poor people manage their money, and that digital financial services are one of the best ways to help poor adults escape poverty. People are always saying to me, poor people don't have money. Isn't that what makes them poor? So why do they need tools to manage their money? But they do have money, at least a little bit. And, it's just that and financial diaries and other data has been showing, it's just that their finances, poor and rural adults, their finances tend to be unstable, unpredictable, and harder to manage. And so it's not like they wake up in the morning and go to a 9-to-5 job. So farmers who might be paid only twice a year need to stretch this money to the next harvest, at the same time paying their monthly expenses, paying daily for food. And so a lot of farmers, for example, are unbanked, and so they turn to cash. The cash is tricky. It's easy to lose. If someone doesn't have a bank account, they may put their cash under their mattress. What if their husband steals it? What if there's a fire? And so, so to help people achieve their long-term goals to save, these are why it's so important to reach the unbanked.
Lyra, you started to talk about India. So just a leading kind of a question from there. Is India very different than the rest of the world, or what other countries are doing, or is it almost in the similar vein? Are the problems there the same as you're seeing, or are they any different?
India is special, as you are all aware. Both the sheer size, plus incredible government commitment. Starting with the Aadhaar digitized ID, which facilitated KYC and documentation challenges, which are often a challenge in other developing countries. Partnered with the JDY program, which after JDY was introduced, there was a surge in account ownership in India. About 80% of all adults in India reported having an account in 2017. Again, it was facilitated by the Aadhaar digitized number and the JDY initiative. What's really notable is not only was there a surge in account ownership, India managed to slash their gender gap, for example, from in 2014, men were almost about over 20 percentage points more likely than women to have an account. That was slashed to 6 percentage points in 2020. So JDY really was effective of getting accounts into the hands of women, rural adults, poor adults. However, and here's a very big caveat, at least in 2017, we found the highest rate and also in the world of inactive accounts where there wasn't even a single deposit or withdrawal in the past year. Although I would mention, looking at other countries, for example, China, where we saw in earlier years, the surge in account ownership followed by the surge in the use of digital payments. There's a lag, and that's why we're really excited to see now the new data. Once I described India in 2017 as the world's greatest financial inclusion opportunity. So it's all, literally hundreds of millions of people who have an account that they're not using. This isn't a failure. This is an opportunity to design the right products that, especially adults who might be illiterate, who might have greater, family and social obligations, make it harder for rural women to travel to the city to use a bank account. How can we reach them with the appropriate products that can improve their lives?
Which is good to hear that, Lyra. We're talking about poor people and women, which could be in far-flung areas in the country. We know traditionally banks have tried to reach there and are still working to reach there through different modes. But there's an emerging, kind of a section which is emerging now, which wasn't as strong in 2017, which is now, is the fintechs, right? What do you think? How can the fintechs help? Who've been unbanked for long historically, and what are the advantages that it could bring to the table?
So since launching the Findex study in 2010, I've had the pleasure to spend a lot of time traveling around the world, piloting the questionnaire, figuring out what we in Washington see as mysteries of the data, understanding why people make the financial decisions they make. And so I talk to people about how digital financial services impacts their lives. So I met herders in Mongolia who used to spend time and money traveling to the city to pay their bills. Now, thanks to the widespread use of mobile payments, they do that from the comfort of their yurt. In 2018 in India, I met a woman who paid 50 rupees to take a minibus from the city to pay a 300 rupee electric bill, from rural area to the city. And digital solutions can disproportionately help rural and poor adults. And she had a phone, but she just didn't know how to use digital banking and didn't trust that her money would get there and her electricity wouldn't be turned off. Fintech can also save unbanked people a lot of money. For example, I'm working with a fintech, studying the data from a fintech in South Korea of migrant workers sending money home to developing Asia. And mobile phones are typically by far the cheapest way to send remittances. And they don't need to garnish wages to skip work to send online. It's more convenient. They can do it from their home in the evening on weekends. And we're also finding that the fintech allows people to more optimize their exchange rates that they're sending home. And fintech also makes it easier for people to get bank accounts if they live in remote areas with few physical bank branches, using bank agents, mobile agents. And in some cases, fintech is helping people benefit from economic opportunities and escape from poverty. There's a study in Kenya that found that the spread of mobile money accounts has dramatically reduced poverty, especially for women. And research in India and South Africa have shown that fintech can help women get jobs, control their money, and weaken sexist attitudes. For example, in a very nice recent study from India of a government workfare program reaching over 100 million people in India, women who received their benefits paid digitally into an account led to increased employment compared to those paid in cash. And the biggest impact was on women whose husbands had expressed the most opposition to their wives working. There are plenty of studies that found that fintech can help stop people from falling into poverty. For instance, if you face an economic emergency, you can more easily collect money from friends and relatives using fintech on your mobile phone. And what's really interesting is that they find you can receive money from both a wider geographic and social network of friends. Could go on. Fintech can improve service administration. They look at studies in India, Niger, and elsewhere. You can see that digital payments remove opportunities for corruption and waste in government programs. My research has recently been focusing on the use of digital payments for salary payments, for example, utility payments. And this also creates new electronic data points that are being used to create alternative credit scores. And so these are evaluations of creditworthiness based on, for example, phone, texting patterns scraped from cell phones. And artificial intelligence tools are being used to infer from this information whether someone is a good credit risk or not. Alternative credit scores can be especially important for entrepreneurs, small businesses, which lack typically the tools to get formal loans and typically don't have the detailed business records or credit history or collateral that banks ask for. And so fintech firms are instead gauging creditworthiness through digital transaction histories, airtime purchases, internet browsing histories, and payments of rent and utility bills. And this data can be collected in real time. But there's important caveats. This fintech can also be a disaster. Some companies have started offering loans through mobile phones to people in countries where consumer protection's weak. And people often end up drowning in debt and struggling to pay off the balances. And some fintech is expensive and poorly designed. So the important thing is to have the good infrastructure and policies in place to enhance the good parts of fintech and reduce the bad parts.
So I was just going to ask you, the fintech actually, besides looking at the value propositions and stuff like that, it greatly increases speed and scale, right? And such amount of speed and scale also, opens up doors to things that could go wrong, right? So there could be disadvantages of using sort of a fintech, specifically those poor people who don't have telephones yet, or who don't, or it's too expensive for them to spend on a phone or a recharge yet. So what do you think are some of the key challenges when applying new tech to inclusion?
So we need more data on how, for example, women experience financial inclusion. Many countries' social norms, you mentioned phone, digital gaps, access gaps and access to technology. So in many countries, social norms keep women excluded from the financial system. It may not be, for example, we were working in Bangladesh where a challenge to women using mobile money agents is simply that social norms makes it difficult for women to give their phone numbers to the male bank agents, which is necessary to activate the account. Meaning that women are missing out on the opportunities of mobile money. And we'd be in a better position to close the gender gap if we had more data, for example, on the number of women agents around the world. Mobile phones can be a tool for delivering fair, affordable financial services to the poor, but they can also be a tool for defrauding the poor. The difference between the two has a lot to do with consumer protection. World Bank research on digital credit, for example, suggests that weak oversight has allowed companies to push predatory loans through mobile phones, leading to widespread default and indebtedness in some countries in Africa. And so policymakers need to ensure that regulations keep pace with digital innovation to ensure things like that don't happen. Otherwise people will distrust digital financial services and development opportunities will be lost. And it's also, using fintech can be especially difficult for people with low financial experience, weak numeracy and literacy issues. And sometimes historically unbanked people like women don't have the tools they need, like an ID card, internet connection, or mobile phone. For example, recent Gallup data finds that men in Pakistan more than 30 percentage points more likely than women to have a phone. And even in India, men are about 20 percentage points more likely than women to have a phone, which can put women at disadvantage at the starting gates. I like to say when I was growing up, the phone hung on the kitchen wall. Now it's in the male head of household's back pocket, where women may not have access to financial services embedded on that phone. And digitization comes with problems. For one thing, digital payments are hard to use for people who struggle with basic literacy and numeracy. Ideally, the payments should be made into interoperable accounts that people want to enable to use for other financial purposes like savings and payments. Otherwise, people will rush to the nearest ATM and cash out the whole sum. The interoperability is both between, for example, mobile providers, but also between banks and fintechs. So for example, we've been doing work in Ghana, where the ability to costly transfer funds between a fintech account and a bank account can encourage longer-term savings, the building of a relationship with a bank to access other appropriate financial services.
That's great, Alira. So we have a question from an audience. This is and it's aimed at both of us, but I'm going to first give you the option to answering it. This is from Meena Kishore of Allstream, and the question is: how great is the disparity between the unbanked populations across the world? Are the factors cultural, or there are any other factors as well? So I'm going to give you this option first.
That's a great question and something we think a lot about. So there are various gaps. If you look at East Asia, for example, generally don't find any gender gaps, but there are huge, Philippines, Indonesia, 20 to 30% gaps between the rich and the poor. And that, potentially is due to more of an infrastructure access problem in Latin America, where you also have, huge gaps between rural and urban areas, rich and poor, where you have less competitive, more concentrated system, less fintech competition, very expensive banking services. South Asia, typically, again, India has made tremendous progress, although I'll add that although India slashed the gender gap in account ownership, there's still a double-digit gap in account usage between men and women. In other words, men with an account are far more likely to use their account than a woman is. And there, certainly social norms is a challenge. Let me take a step back. One of the distressing findings in 2020, we saw in a number of countries, especially in the Middle East and South Asia, where there was a surge in account ownership by men, but women's account ownership stayed stagnant. And those were countries that were more typically fintech-enabled accounts, either mobile money accounts or simply app-based bank accounts, which gave greater access and less expensive access. And so, we really saw women being left behind. And so the gap was actually, although account ownership, the level was increasing, the gap between men and women was also increasing. And, that is something that really needs to be addressed. In our research, we find, for example, a driving force in the gender gap is simply labor force participation. I gave earlier the example of Turkey. In Turkey, it's really wild. So there's a 30 percentage point gender gap between men and women, but there's no gender gap, zero gender gap between men and women who are wage employed. And even between men and women who are self-employed, the gap is small, but 70% of women in Turkey are out of the labor force. And very few women who are out of the labor force have an account. If an account is expensive, the household will only have one if there's a need for that account. So I would suggest that government policies, governments certainly take the lead by digitizing their own payment. This is something where India has been making progress by making their social transfer payments, government wage payments into an account to increase the use. And certainly, as merchant payment infrastructure digitization increases, women who may not have regular income but might be more responsible for shopping and making those types of payments, they'll have a greater need for an account as well.
So while I'm not supposed to, answer questions, but I'm going to take a break here and try and answer this one as well. I have a couple of thoughts. I think it's a stack approach which we should be looking at, and you went and highlighted a whole lot of them there. So starting from the infrastructure, the ecosystem, the regulation and policies, the right kind of products, and on top of that is behavior change, because if people are not used to moving away from cash, because cash is anonymous and cash is easy to store and spend, and everything else around it. So I think it's all of these things in my mind which come together and help address it. Because if you don't solve any one of these puzzles, you will be stuck in the middle somewhere and trying to do stuff. So I'm just going to stop there and not try and answer too much, because I have another question for you, Lyra. We are in the times of COVID, and we know for sure that a lot of people around the world have been very badly impacted, specifically those who are poor people and migrants, and informal kind of workers. What, in your view, are you seeing across the world around this? Will there be a V-shaped curve? Will there be an extensive push to address this? Do you think that the people are starting to bounce back already? What's your view? Both an India and global view around it.
Those are great questions. I'll end with a sneak preview of some new data. So we know there's been a surge in digital payments, right? So as a way to avoid the sanitary concerns of handling cash. Plus people need to stand in line to collect cash payments, which is the type of thing we want to avoid in this era of physical distancing. And so fintech has come to the agenda during COVID, because policymakers' first concern has been to get financial aid to those who need it. And so many governments, like India, are using digital channels for COVID-19 relief payments. And apparently it's going well in some places. During COVID, we're also seeing more apparel factories paying wages into an account, agribusiness chains paying farmers directly to mobile money accounts. Excuse me, local grocers and other merchants allowing customers to pay from their mobile money and app-based accounts. In Bangladesh, for example, the government has documented that millions more garment factory workers are receiving their payments into a mobile money account. But there are a few challenges. One, and we're actually collecting new data this year around the world around the question of, have you made a first digital payment, merchant payment during a COVID? And what do you prefer? The question is, will people understand, will people appreciate the convenience of making digital payments, or do they want to go back to paying in cash? And that's dependent on making sure the products are designed right, that they're affordable and convenient. But I think it'll be an interesting question to see going forward. In Cambodia, for example, we've received there's some evidence that factories that began paying workers electronically at the beginning of COVID are going back to cash payments. And we need to understand what are the challenges and how can we design these products better. And the second development goal is that, the goal is that the workers who are paid into account should be able to keep their money digital and never cash out. We don't want these accounts to only be a transaction account, right? The development goals of account of being banked are only achieved if you use your account to save, make payments. So it's like workers should be able to use their mobile money account to pay for transportation, buy food, and send money home to their family. And so in 2017, the Findex data found that about half of all adults sent or received money digitally from their account. But again, we're seeing rapid innovation that we're excited to measure. For example, in Kenya, the mobile money operator partnered with public transport companies to let them quickly, adopt and accept cashless payments during COVID. So KPMG did a really interesting survey of micro merchants in India, and they found that their customers prefer cash, which is simply seen as more convenient than digital channels. And they also found that the largest barrier to digital merchant payments is security concerns. And so this distrust in the safety of payment channels has real implications. For example, while I was piloting Findex, I met a woman outside Mumbai who sells beauty products online. But her customers don't trust the payment system and will only pay cash on delivery. But this means that she can't restock her inventory for up to 5 days until the goods are delivered and she receives her payments. And so digitizing the complete channel really benefits these e-commerce entrepreneurs. So it's important to really remember that take-up of digital financial services requires not only the digitization of the merchant acceptance infrastructure, but also consumers having both the financial capability and the trust that their data and their money will be kept safe, their personal information won't be hacked, and that the money will be received, that their goods will be sent in order to make digital financial transactions.
This is great. So just one advice from you, which we're looking for, that is around the administrative data from the supply side, because if you look at any financial inclusion kind of data that is released by the governments around the world, it's very restrictive, and it doesn't kind of capture everything and talk about anything else. I know for sure you spoke about in the beginning about the women being identified, and the government was able to transfer funds to their accounts. Is because I believe that they had the disaggregated data on gender. So I just wanted you to talk a little bit about and help us understand that what does the right level of data availability help and can help in accelerating inclusion in any country?
That's a great question. And there are a number of global efforts, both led by the IMF and World Bank, to encourage both banks, encouraging regulators to encourage their banks to collect gender disaggregated data. Certainly, of account ownership, of credit, and what's a lot harder, even of SME loans, for example, of business credit. And we always say that you can't solve a problem you can't measure. Encouraging banks to collect that information and provide it to the regulators serves a number of important purposes. One, it allows us to identify the problem. Two, it allows you to track progress over time. And three, it's really important for the bank themselves to be aware of, certainly gender biases in their own portfolios of both accounts and credit. And stress, really for banks to set their own internal targets for certain, in the case of gender, for inclusive finance. The World Bank's UFA, Universal Financial Access Goals, which I think were truly grand and ambitious. But what was really important about those goals was simply the transparency around these gaps, around financial inclusion goals, and just showing the government's commitment to achieving the goal of greater inclusive financial inclusion was quite successful.
This is excellent. I think based on your work around the world, and you've also done extensive work in India, I think the last question which I'm going to ask you, Laura, is that do you think India can offer any advice and lessons to other parts of the world? And is there anything else which India can learn from other countries?
So following up on the question around achieving gender parity, financial inclusion, and speaking of data, which is my expertise, really goes beyond just data and number of accounts. I would suggest that it also expands to women staff, women in client-facing roles. There's growing evidence from India, actually, a number of papers showing the importance, for example, of having women bank staff, both for opening accounts and really importantly for credit. When you have women loan officers, especially for women clients, good clients are more likely to get credit, by looking at both credit approvals and the performance of loans over time. And so banks should set goals for increasing the number of women in client-facing roles, women in management. Certainly fintechs should be having as a strategy to attract female customers, women agents. So that's certainly one point. And India has been successful in a number of regards. Both the expansion of account ownership, and certainly now it's important for us to watch and learn lessons from the expansion in government transfer payments made into an account. In 2017, we spoke of India being the world's literally largest financial inclusion opportunity. And India has really been taking advantage of that during COVID, using these accounts, many of which probably may not have been used before, to make government transfer payments. And now the challenge is seeing, can we encourage these women to use the accounts and not only use them as a transaction account to cash out? Can these women be encouraged to save a little bit of money, or to keep the money digital to make payments to merchants, to send money to pay their bills?
So this is great. It's good to hear all of these things here. I think I have a personal question now for you, which is that what is the status of the latest Findex? What are you kind of doing in terms of data collection? What timelines are you looking at? By when can we see the next report? We are all so excited about it.
So we were in the field. We went to the field in March 2020, and we're very quickly, just out of concern for the health of the interviewers, and also the real concern that interviewers could be spreading a virus across households as they went around interviewing. Face-to-face interviews was quickly shut down in all countries. Gallup has heroically pivoted to phone-based interviews. So we will be over 2020 trying to collect some data just as a benchmark to understand the success in phone surveying. It's very hard. It's very hard to get representation of the complete population in countries where the complete population doesn't own a phone. In some countries, rural areas, poor adults. In many countries, there's been a big challenge, asking the male household head to hand his phone to his wife or daughter in order to get this representation of women. I'll tell you a really interesting aside. It's been, there's a great conversation now among NGOs and development organizations to understand the challenges of phone-based surveys. Speakerphone. So most poor adults don't have headphones, so they go into speakerphone. And they've been finding that surveys done on speakerphone, greatly affects women's answers, right? So if your whole family, everyone's stuck at home and they're all listening to your responses, it's even harder to get accurate information. So that said, we've postponed the Findex data collection to 2021 in the hope that it'll be done, hopefully at least a hybrid of in-person and phone-based by the end of the calendar year, and we'll be releasing the data in spring 2022. I'll add that we're piloting this year in Mexico and a few other countries some new questions around COVID, especially this question of, did you pivot to digital payments during COVID? And trying to get in real time this information on what were the challenges, which do you prefer and why, in order to better design products that people will use.
Thank you, Lyra. This is really cool. I'm so glad that you could take some time out and talk to us out of your busy schedule. I know we are already in 2021, so we are eagerly kind of look forward to your, the new report in, I think early next year. Over to you, Radhika. I think I've done my.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much, Lyra and Pawan, for this really engaging and actually informative conversation. And as Pawan said, Lyra, we are also looking forward to the next FinDev results to come out. And then we hope that when that happens, you can join the summit in person and talk about it, join us here to talk about it. So that will be really great. We look forward to that. And so wonderful having you both. And thank you so much, both of you, for joining us this evening. We will move on, I think, with a short break. So thank you everyone for joining us for this panel. And we will continue to be in this room. So everyone can be logged in here, because after a short break, we will move on to the next fireside chat with Amal talking to Mr. Aditya Puri. So thank you so much for joining, Lyra and Pawan. And we look forward, as always, next year to host you in person.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
My name is Elsiwan Horam. I'm 36 years old and I'm running my small shop. My business is much better. I learned that as a business person, if I want to become a successful person, I'm coachable and determined.
After the financial education, I know the right source to get the money with low interest. Right now, I'm struggling hard, but then in 5 years, I'm sure I'm going to build up a big food processing unit.
Thaksom bala kaujai ai khurai konjam lekai dagini ai ahambada phak amina sajarami training chatla matung dagidi ai products kauna che makhan saba bag sare button sare fine cover che aina sabadagidi order mina matang tawire.
Before I attend that training, I didn't maintain records for budget, but after that I started maintaining records for monthly. I started writing monthly expenditure and monthly income. I used to keep the records like that.
जिंदगी इन पहाड़ों की जैसी है ना, क्या पता कौन सा मोड़ कहाँ ले जाए। मेरा नाम तनुजा है और मैं सिरपुर गांव की रहने वाली हूँ। पापा डेली लेबर का काम करते थे। घर में मम्मी, दादा दादी और छोटा भाई रहता है। 6 का परिवार और कमाने वाला सिर्फ एक। हर दिन मैं घर के काम करके स्कूल जाती थी और फिर लौट के खुद की पढ़ाई। मुझे ज़िंदगी में कुछ बनना था और फैमिली ने हमेशा मेरा सपोर्ट किया, किसी भी हालात में। 12th के बाद मेरी फ्रेंड ने मुझे स्वतंत्र प्रोग्राम के बारे में बताया। पता चला वहाँ मेरे जैसे स्टूडेंट्स की करियर ट्रेनिंग होती है। वहाँ मैंने होटल मैनेजमेंट की ट्रेनिंग ली और मैं यूँ निकल पड़ी, पीछे मुड़ने का नाम ही नहीं लिया। और सिरपुर भी बदल रहा है, लड़कियाँ करियर के बारे में सोचने लगी हैं। आज मैं होटल के फ्रंट ऑफिस का काम करती हूँ, आगे जाके जनरल मैनेजर भी बन जाऊँगी, पक्की बात है। मम्मी पापा ने कभी साथ नहीं छोड़ा और ना ही छोड़ेंगे।
अभी तो सिर्फ स्टार्ट किया है, पिक्चर तो पूरी बाकी है।
Situation across Delhi continues to be grim as pollution levels remain sky high. Delhi Heights woke up to another morning of dense smog. However,
winter is my favorite time to visit Delhi. However, in recent years, these months have seen a sharp spike in air pollution. As we're driving around the city, you can actually see the smog. I think everybody realizes that this is becoming a problem and it needs to be addressed. But change is happening in India. How we tackle environmental issues is taking center stage. To find out more, I'm meeting Tarun Balram, who is heading the Sustainable Finance Priorities for HSBC India.
So the government has made strong commitments to reduce carbon emissions. 40% of the installed capacity by 2030 will come from non-fossil fuel-based energy sources. So our priorities are to be a leading bank in the sustainable finance space, integrating climate risk into the way we work. For a bank like ours, which has a full-service platform in India and can cater to the needs of a client in this sector across the spectrum, it's a great opportunity.
I'm here to visit a client that is part of that change.
Energy is extremely important for success of India's transition from emerging market to a developed market. Now, when you look at the different sources India has available, it's by definition solar is the most promising because it's available everywhere and you don't have to pay anyone for using sunshine.
We are on the rooftop in the middle of Delhi, which is one of Azure's rooftop solar capacity installation. This is one of their smallest installations with a capacity of about 1.6 megawatts, which can power about 400 to 500 homes. So we issued Azure's first green bond in 2017 of $500 million. What the green bond did was allowing them access to capital, which could help them grow their portfolio. So HSBC has primarily given a lot of these renewable companies access to a large pool of international investors who want to invest in projects which make a difference to the community at a cost which makes sense to the company and as well as returns which make sense to the investors.
We're a 10-year-old company and today we are a portfolio of 3,000 megawatts. We think we can do 10,000 in 20 years. Ultimately, we want to make sure that we are providing clean, low-cost energy for Indian consumers and helping the government meet its objectives on socially inclusive growth through clean energy.
It is inspiring to see change in action. Companies like Azure prove that clean power is possible, and it makes me proud that HSBC is part of it.
आप लोग जब भी रिक्शा चलाओ तो 3 बातों का ध्यान रखना चाहिए। पहली बात रेस, दूसरी बात ब्रेक और तीसरी बात ट्रैफिक नियम। मना ही किया था घर में, परिवार वालों ने तो मना किया था कि ये तो ना आदमियों का काम है, तो आदमी करते हैं रिक्शा चलाने का काम।
शुरू से मेरे को डाउट था कि बाहर कैसे निकल पाएगी, जो साइकिल नहीं चला पाती वो बाहर ये रिक्शा कैसे चलाएगी।
फिर मैं तो ना मैंने कहा कि नहीं अब तो मैं करूँगी, मेरे को अच्छा लगा ये काम, तो मैं ना हर जगह से दूसरे देशों से हम लोग आते हैं हमारे यहाँ देखने, तो हमको जयपुर की चीज़ें दिखाते हैं उनको और उनसे बात करना अच्छा लगता है, उन्हें अच्छा लगता है। और एक महिला रिक्शा चला रही है, हमसे टूरिस्ट खुश होके जाते हैं। चाबी लगाओ इसमें, चाबी लगाओ इसमें, ताला खोलो। खाली पड़ा है ना रोड, तो थोड़ा रेस खोल के और फिर अपन को सीधे हाथ पे रहता है, इंडिकेटर देना है। इससे मौका, मैं तो खुद ड्राइवर बनी हुई हूँ, पर मैं दूसरी महिलाओं को भी इसमें ट्रेनर बन के उनको सिखाती हूँ रिक्शा। और आमदनी तो मेरी बढ़ी है इसमें, और मैं इसमें ना शेयर भी खरीदा है, जो मैं इस कंपनी की हिस्सेदार बनी हूँ। मैं इसमें मेरी आमदनी बढ़ी है, जो मेरे घर में मतलब मेरे घर में पहले कम थी, अब ज़्यादा आमदनी होती है क्योंकि मैं भी कमाती हूँ।
कि लेडीज अच्छे से अच्छा कमाए, अपन यही चाहते हैं अपनी लेडीज आगे बढ़े,
पति का साथ हो, बच्चों को अपन कुछ भी दे सकते हैं ऐसे। बदलाव आया में आत्मनिर्भरता, मतलब आत्मविश्वास पैदा हुआ मेरे में। पहले कुछ नहीं जानती थी, यहाँ तक कि मैं अपने पिछले वाली गली के लोगों को भी नहीं जानती थी।
होटलों के बारे में भी, मार्केट के बारे में भी ये बदलाव देखेंगे बाद में, और बोलने का, चालने का, ये सब चेंज हो गया है।
Good evening once again, and I welcome you all to the finale of day one of the Inclusive Finance India Summit. and quite a session to look out for the final session. This is the concluding chat in the fireside chat series, the third one that we have had this evening. And this fireside chat will have the world's best banker, the most disruptive one for sure, speak with India's most insightful analyst of the banking sector. An Inclusive Finance India Summit is privileged to have this evening Mr. Aditya Puri, the founding managing director of HDFC Bank, who over the last 25 years broke all conventional banking norms and through innovation and cutting edge strategies and leveraging technology, put HDFC Bank as the strongest private sector bank in the country. His perspectives on what needs to change in the banking ecosystem to not only make the Indian banking sector globally competitive, but also how it can serve to the last bottom percentile of the population with effective access and ease, will be today's highlight. And Kamal, who wrote the bestseller HDFC 2.0, perhaps knows not only HDFC Bank probably better than many insiders within the bank, but he also understands Mr. Puri's mind really well. So let us all look forward to a great evening blockbuster session. And I would like to hand over the charge now to Kamal to take this forward, please. And welcome again.
Thank you, Radhika. Thank you, Radhika. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending on whatever geography you are in, the audience I'm talking about. So welcome to the very warm welcome to the last show of first day. 45 minutes, we'll have a fireside chat with Mr. Puri on the future of banking. And I promise we'll try to make it more interesting than the last 45 of the fifth day of fourth test match between India and Australia, what you watched this morning on India time. Welcome, Mr. Puri. Well, let me go straight to the point. September 1994, you had a trip to California, came back, and from the airport, you drove down to your office. You made sure that all your senior executives were there. And there you told them that you need to disrupt yourself. You need to become a marketplace. You need to become Alibaba or Netflix of India in the banking space. And today, indeed, you have transformed HDFC Bank from a life cycle bank to a lifestyle bank to a marketplace. You are selling even Satta. That's Papad, what you call from source from Jalandhar. I wish you start selling wine some days with a liberal regulator allowing you to do so. So tell me, since then, things have changed dramatically. First, we got demonetization, November 2016. That gave a big push to digitalization. In 2014, you decided to take the plunge. People are talking about digitalization, but there was no external push but by any agency. It was internally people are doing. But since then, we have seen first demonetization, but that fizzled out. It was not, it didn't stay for good. And then, of course, the COVID pandemic. Things have changed dramatically. So tell me, 6 years down the line, how do you see the banking scene in India?
See, Tamal, that's a difficult one, but I'll tell you how things are going to progress. Obviously, everybody, it's not just banks, everybody will have to take into account the effects that digitization has brought in the overall environment.
Yeah.
So whether you take, if you take WhatsApp, they used an OTT app to completely disrupt the telecom services messaging income. You take what's happened to media, and digital advertising is taking over. You see what is happening in terms of healthcare, you see what is happening to education, you see what is happening to banks. So almost everything is being disrupted. The issue is simple. The issue is that when you look at the change that has happened in terms of telecommunication, cloud computing, artificial intelligence, social mobility, and a large portion of the population being digitally native, I think what is given you as an opportunity is to use these advances in a manner that you can provide a better product to the customer through a segmentation of one and based on analysis that you can have, in-depth analysis, and at the same time, you can reduce your cost. If you then see whether it's an Amazon or it's a Netflix or Google or any of these guys, none of them are reinventing technology. They're riding on top of basic systems. So most of the fintech guys were also talking about an OT, having an over-the-top ride on our networks, customers, merchant relationships through the use of application processing interfaces, and thereby then giving a more convenient, frictionless, faster turnaround service to the customer. The second thing that has happened, and I think that has been accentuated by COVID, is that when you have so much connectivity, there's so much information moving all around the place that the difference between industry starts to get blurred. Where does insurance stop? Where does a marketplace stop? Who else can be in it? Can a manufacturer have a finance company? So competition starts to get blurred. When you have so much information moving around, information is power. The power moves to the customer very clearly. And you also have a situation with telecommunication that the limitations of boundary are removed. This further leads to tremendous amount of automation, which takes away the hierarchical and the bureaucratic structures that are there. And you have a lower reduction of cost with cost of processing, which removes the barriers, and a demographic shift. So I think the fact that you have to change is not an option. But also the fact that we must remember is we always, when the pendulum swings in change, you always go from one side to the other. So I remember a long time back when people used to talk to Mr. Kamath and me of bricks and clicks, that there'll be no bricks, it'll only be clicks. Aisa nahi chalta hai. It's practical, and what is convenient to the customer is what he is going to do. And the adoption of technology is much slower than the innovation of technology. So what will happen going forward is you have to provide frictionless, convenient, across multiple access points, reduce your costs so that you can be more competitive in your pricing. But at the same time, this business is saying Google will eat you up, like we said, fintech will eat you up. No, Google doesn't want to be a bank. The day he becomes a bank, his entire operating model goes. He does want to monetize his customer base. Today, it's only advertising. He wants to go further. He may want to monetize through going into financial services, but he has to be very careful. The line is very thin as to where he goes. And you know what's happened to Alibaba, and a lot of people told us Alibaba, and I used to keep saying, Alibaba cannot be repeated. It was the Wild West in China when Alibaba was formed. We're seeing the consequences now. So banks will exist in a different form. There will be more competition. Customer will be king. You have to provide more and more services at the lower cost. You will probably have to move to cloud, but I'm talking too much. So I hope I've given you an answer. Branches will be smaller, more sales and service, and banks will be more financial providers in terms of partnership with others. Like if you take us even today, Tamal, we have to get the scale and we have to fine tune further. You can bank with us. You can take a loan in 10 seconds. You can shop. So if you want to buy a mobile phone, you come to us. Apple phone is cheapest. You want to buy a Samsung TV, you come to us. You want to buy anything that is related to consumer durables, grocery, anything, you come to us. We give you a reward point. You want to buy insurance, you come to us. That's a third-party product, not manufactured. You want to buy advisory, you come to us. It doesn't necessarily have to be from ourselves. You want to buy stocks, you come to us. So there will be lots of partnerships. There will be frictionless. There will be a lot of change, but banks will also exist, finance companies will also exist, and platforms will also exist.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Puri. I think you set the context, and I have got all my questions from what you have said. So let me start from where you have said. You know,
and
you
see how
always...
much the world changes. Instead of a drink, I'm having a hot kada.
Yes, yes. Normally, it could have been a wine time for you in this nice,
Exactly, but
pleasant.
now first you have kada.
Okay. Now, sir, tell me one thing. You all along been emphasizing on the fact that the system is essentially, technically, I'm calling that is a OTT, over the top system. And you said that, look, all these guys need to ride on a bank's infrastructure. Now, if the banks do not allow them, then where would they go? And you also said, I remember that story that you said that you ask, you get the biggest Michelin chef in the world and send him to a fancy kitchen and ask him to make chicken curry. And there are every equipment there. There's a weighing machine, there's a temperature control, there's all sorts of spices. But unless there's a chicken, the Michelin chef will not be able to make the chicken curry. Similarly, all these guys will not be able to do anything because the chicken, in this case, the customers are with banks. So if the banks need to allow them to ride over them, that's what happened. And in your previous bank, HDFC Bank, which you created, you did not allow them. You chose to disrupt yourself. But now I am asking you, so long you were, banks had to negotiate with the so-called fintech, but now the tech fins are there who have their customer base. Amazon has its customer base, Google has its customer base, Facebook has its customer base, and they are getting into the payment space. So there is a fine but very significant difference between a fintech and tech fin. And TechFin are getting into space. So how do the bank protect their citadel? Or do you see collaboration? What exactly happened?
A bit of both. See, Tama, let's be clear. When you talk about Google Pay, what is Google Pay running on? Google Pay is running on bank systems.
Yeah.
Google Pay is nothing but using the infrastructure given by the banks and NPCI.
Correct.
For a long time, I think it is expedient trying to push digitalization. They're telling banks not to charge. I think that's not going to work because today 40% of the volumes in a bank are coming from the Google Pay and the Phone Pay and the Amazon Pay and the Facebook. We have to invest the money. Now, if they think it's great business, they should do it. So you'd say they can't charge. Don't say banks can't charge. So the point is, yes, banks will also move to cloud to reduce their costs, but I think a fair and equitable understanding of who's putting in the money, who should be remunerated has to be there. Otherwise, it will become difficult. But you're absolutely right. Let's take Google or let's take Facebook. They have customers. Now they have to get more products through into the customers, which at the moment they've been, other than advertising, they've been trying for a hell of a long time. And they want to get more products into it. So, and now they're trying to see whether they can monetize through financial products. There they have to be very careful. They can't do the lending themselves because then they start to get into regulation whether they're a bank or they're a platform. So they are trying to find ways. Apple Pay, Google Pay, all this is all loss making. Even with the banks not charging, by the time they give cashback, it's all loss making and a small ticket. So the issue is they have to figure out how to monetize their customer base. The banks have to figure out how they're going to provide frictionless service to match what Amazon and Google can do at the same price, and then have a much wider variety as to what they can do, which is what we've done with our marketplace platform, Smart Buy, where we act as an aggregator, which is linked to the sites. We have a link to the sites of all the guys who provide the goods, and thereby a customer coming through us can deal with them. So what will happen is there is an intersection. They have to be able to find a basis that they can sell more products to their customers. But the question is not so easy for them either. Why should somebody take a loan from him?
Mm-hmm.
And if they take a loan, does he become a bank or does he become a finance company? Mm-hmm. That's number one. Number two, even if they do, how long will they be able to fund him at a reasonable price? So should they be acting as originators? Should they be acting as loan providers? Could it be a combination of both? We look at search engines, for instance, and look at search optimization through software that's available, which converts into a lead, and you probably pay him for origination. So it's not so clear cut. I think the platforms themselves have to see as to where they're going from here. And they're becoming too large. When you become too large, the governments don't like it. So the issue is there'll be part collaboration like what's happened in Google Pay or Amazon Pay, etc. There will be issues as to how we can bring financial services there and what will be the revenue sharing and booking arrangement and the regulatory arrangement. Because yes, they have a customer, but you say a telecom customer, it's not so easy. You know, it's very easy to say cross-sell. But normally cross-sell happens to related products. So from telecom, that way all telecom fellows should have become everything. So they need to figure out how they're going to get more products into the customers. The banks need to figure out how they're going to preserve their customer base, in partnership increase it, but change their systems to be able to match the frictionless customer convenience that the platforms are offering.
So, Mr. Puri, if I'm not mistaken, what you are hinting at, there's one deciding factor for these entities to take a leap into banking is the regulation. Now, would they like to be regulated? Like if you are a bank, you are subject to SLR and CRR and private sector lending, so
and
on
all
and so forth.
kinds of stuff. It's not just SLR, CRR.
Yes. Typically, one one note a day, like an apple a day, keep the doctors away. Regulators believe that at least one note a day, keep all these things away. So they will keep on. They would need to tackle all these issues, which is not easy for them. But what you have not said, and my inference, correct me if I'm wrong, we call it fintech, we call it technology, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, everything boils down how you access data and you use the data, right? So like for instance, Amazon run the world's biggest retail stores. It's a tech company. It's nothing to do with retail. Uber is the world's largest taxi company, which owns absolutely not even a single vehicle. Airbnb is the world's largest hotel chain without owning a hotel. Swiggy is India's largest on-demand food delivery platform without owning a restaurant. And so data is everything. And I am told that...
No, but wait. Data is everything, I agree with you. But if the quality of the data matters... Just think of it this way. I'll only give one sentence, then you can carry on.
Yeah.
You need to reconstruct what the fellow will want and how he will want to sell. So if he buys a book from you, you can tell him how to buy another book. He buys a movie from you, you tell him what else to buy. But do you realize the richness of the bank data? I know what whiskey you drink, which club you go to, which shop you've gone to, where have you got your loan, what is your car, how much stocks you have, how much electricity bill you pay, how much telephone bill you pay. Now I can construct you without. Now if you buy an air conditioner, okay, you bought an air conditioner, you will have to make a lot of leap of faith to be able to sell that many products to the customer, because just that information is not enough.
No, Mr. Puri, that's exactly I'm coming to that. So I am told now, when a lady gets pregnant, the Google, you call it Google auntie or Papa Google, Mr. Google or Miss Google, I don't know what's the gender of Google, but Google gets to know before even her husband, because whatever she is doing on internet, Google knows that when a lady is pregnant before even her husband. So data is everything, but are the banks been able to mine those data and use them fruitfully?
Absolutely.
So my question, sir, my question is this: do the banks need to transform themselves into tech companies by use this data in a fruitful way, or you allow the tech companies to run banks?
No. See, there is no question about the fact that the banks will run technology platforms which are rich in data, and you have to use that data to be able to analyze it and thereby use it to sell and scale. So there is no option, but we have the best quality data, and there are enough companies out there that analyze for you. There are also people like Adobe who talk about software as a service, and based on the-spot analysis without a data warehouse, they tell you based on the information available, what is the most likely product that you can consume. So do banks have to use artificial intelligence hell of a lot? Yes. Do they have to use it for marketing? Yes. Do they have to use it for campaign management? Yes. Do they have to use it for product generation? Yes. Do they have to use it for credit and risk management? Yes. So unless they use information and technology together, and that's what I was trying to say, that they have to move to see that they're using all the tools available to them to provide risk management and credit at scale, to be able to convert and do better marketing and campaign based on analysis of data available with you, to be able to gap straight through processing based on changing their forms, etc., which automatically get filled in, to be able to offer them products on the fly. Today, if you see, we not only have a 10-second loan, but if you do a consumer durable during our HDFC Bank treats, you can get a loan on the fly. So do the banks have to change this way? Absolutely. And they're best positioned because they know it.
Okay, Mr.
Sit
Puri.
quiet, you're dead.
Yeah, Mr. Puri, if I'm not mistaken, in your previous bank, HDFC, now 4 group heads are from telecom sector, and 3 of them are actually tech guys. Now, is this the way banking will be done? Like you probably have a CEO. Probably have a CEO who understands what is a repo and reverse repo and policy rate and the foreign exchange market and so on and so forth, this management. But the other guys, the tier 2 of all the banks will be only guys from technology companies or telecom companies. Is the way to go?
See, the point is technology is an enabler. So if your question is, I think tech is a part of business now. Without knowing tech, and if the CEO is not conversant with tech, you have a problem. But more importantly, what is happening is you have to deleverage the organization, delayer it. When you delayer it, you got all expertise available and you get together and the customer is the king. So you can't have a say, because unless the CEO believes in it, you can't push through this drastic change. This change is not simple. It's changing your business model completely. So when we went through it for the last 2.5 years, there was blood on the floor. A 10-second loan means what? Completely changes the jobs of so many people. That fellow logs in. The models are giving him credit. He looks at it. After he does the credit, we are picking up information and we have an electronic signature with him, and then the credit goes. Now, to do this and change when you're doing well, you're creating a lot of uncertainty among the people, and you have to make sure that you are taking care of their concerns. Otherwise, you can't do it. In today's world, whether you read Taleb, it's called anti-fragile, or you read McKinsey, or you read what Ping An is saying, fundamentally, the only system that works is every man jack in the organization has to believe along. The CEO can be the leader, but he has to make sure that everybody follows him like an army based on belief that this is the way, and it's not going to be harmful for us. We were the first one who came out and said, look, we positioned right on technology. There will be no job cut. There will be no increment cut. There will be no bonus cut. You can't imagine, Tamal, what happened. We've even promised them this year. So, will technology be an integral part of the business? Yes. Will we have to have a complete change that takes into account the increase, the greater connectivity, the greater automation, the reduction in cost, the ability to be able to offer business and how you can mine your data, the deleveraging. So going forward, say for a bank, like we did with one of the healthcare companies, is that we are no longer now looking at only a company, we're looking at an ecosystem. So the banks will need to look like what we are seeing is the health ecosystem, and there'll be hundreds of ecosystems like this. So the doctor should deal with us, the hospital should deal with us, the chemist should deal with us, the nursing home should deal with us, the stockist should deal with us. And we should be able to provide, and all the people going to the hospitals, and we should be able to provide offline, online, simultaneous loans as well as appropriate products for each one of them. And that completely changes the dynamics of profitability. And how do you see a Google doing that?
Okay. Puri sir, you are talking about alliances. You are talking about the new structure of doing banking. You are talking about cost cutting. You are talking about data mining. All I understand. You also made an extremely important point that you said, even though you are the biggest disruptor in Indian banking, biggest believer in digitalization, you said no. It cannot be a unipolar world. There will be a mix and match. There will be both brick and mortar and digital, catering to different needs. Now tell me, is India ready for a digital bank? Now 2014 UK got it Atom Bank, right? And as I speak, the other day one gentleman from UK was telling me, during the COVID time all banks were busy but not giving loan because processing etc. not working, but he got it from Monzo Bank, which is only app-based bank. And all of us know that what's happening in Ant from the Alibaba stable in Hong Kong. So tell me, is India ready for experiment with only digital bank on app?
But why do you need only a digital bank? I say HDFC Bank is a digital bank. You got archaic system. Don't talk about London. Yeah, they're living in the old colonial times.
Okay.
We are a digital bank today. If you don't want anything that you want to do with the bank today, you can do digitally across any channel that you want, and we give you an omni-channel experience. Why do I need to split it out? So the point is, there will be somebody that will like a digital bank. And Tamal, I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you want only a digital bank or you want both? Same bank, you can do digital and you can do deal physical.
No, I'm just asking you, yeah, there could be, like, do we say today, tomorrow, HDFC or Bank of Baroda or State Bank of India or ICICI or Axis, they should have a banking subsequent, provided the regulator allows it, only digital only bank which will carry in my pocket on the app based. And
you can do it today,
this.
Tamal. HDFC Bank is a digital bank today. Today you can carry it on your mobile phone. There's nothing you cannot do on the mobile phone today. We are a digital bank.
Okay, so we don't need any Atom or Ant in India?
No, we don't, because see, when they came through, they went through a hell of a lot. They were in the Wild West. If we see, ultimately it's the customer. So when you look at the new environment, what did we say? What is the purpose? We are here to provide you convenience, frictionless, trustworthy service across your financial needs. That's our purpose. How do we do it? We do it with automation at the lowest cost and quick decision making so that it comes through. How do we grow our business? By looking at ecosystems and having tech-rich platforms which allow us to offer more products to the customer. How do we maintain the goodwill? By giving back to society as well, where we think we are one of the better ones globally, giving back to society and having a positive carbon footprint. So, are we a digital bank? Yes. But if you want to come to our branch and get the same services, you can.
Okay, fine. Mr. Puri, tell me, so in this entire context, what we are talking about is the ideal scenario, and logically, what would the landscape look like? Now, if you look at our public sector banking system, which is continue to be, the stock would be about 65%, both in credit and deposit market. So where do you see, how do you visualize their future in this new world?
That's a tough one. Why are you getting me into trouble in my old age? Yeah? But okay, I'll take a shot at it. The fact of the matter is, there's been debates all the way to kingdom come on what to do with the public sector banks. I think we have to be very clear, whether there's the Naik report, there's others. Some banks are transforming. Like I think State Bank has transformed very well. Bank of Baroda is moving there. So I think the government strategy of having 5 banks which they can change is very good. They are banks that they will need to decide what they do, whether they merge or they privatize them. I think they will have to do that. But the public sector banks, unless they change in their fundamental constitution, will lose market share much faster than what they've lost in the last 2 decades. And that'll be sad, because that's my asset as an individual Indian.
One related thing, essentially, when you talk about future and banking and with you on board, our focus is on the infrastructure and digitalization. But I don't want to miss this opportunity to also pick your brain to a few issues and particularly budget round the corner. So, what is important for the banking segment? And you have said you are too old. After you yourself said that after your little discomfort and change in the heart, etc., you became a 40-year-old person, which is becoming difficult for your wife to manage. That's about 5 years back, you said, or 4 years back.
Yes, of
So
course.
you are young.
Kamal,
You
you
are
know me
young.
well.
You are
I'm
young.
old when it suits me. I'm young when it suits me.
Okay, sir, tell me two things
So
I would
old,
like
old gives me like you get poetic license. Age also gives you some license.
Okay,
But,
sir. So, no, if you don't
so
want to
I'll tell
say,
you. I'll tell you
now two
now.
things.
Two,
No,
three
sir, two
things
things
I
I
want
want
to
to.
clarify, Tamal.
Yeah, yeah.
Number one, I think people have underestimated the amount of provisioning both the public and private sector, along with RBI, have done in the last 4 years. So it's wrong to only talk about 8.5%, 9% NPA without saying 7% is provided for. Then the net NPA in the Indian banking system is not much higher than globally. That is one part of it. The second part of it is that we have a capital adequacy even in most public sector banks on an average of about 13%, which is above the regulatory minimum. I'm not saying they don't need more. The banking system is surplus today. Anybody who wants money for a viable project, I can assure you, come to HDFC Bank, they'll give it to you. So going forward, when they say, can the banks meet the needs? I think they can meet the needs, but we need to solve our NPA problem, which in my view can be solved reasonably quickly, because if you have 75% provisioning and you have a basic asset, because most of the people overseas didn't lend on the basis of an asset, that asset's replacement value will be more than 100% of the loan. In the worst scenario, you will be accretive, like JP Morgan just now announced mind-blowing results because they could write back. I do believe that solving your bad debt problem will actually be accretive to the balance sheet after you take the provision into account. Do we need a very clear understanding that the public sector banks must be focused on lending? I believe we are under-penetrated in semi-urban and rural India. I also believe that the regulator must understand cash flow lending compared to security, because when you go into semi-urban and rural India, 60% of the country lives there. There are issues in terms of finding clean security, etc., but the world has moved to cash flow lending. Securitized lending will get you into a problem, and I think that's something that both the regulators and the banks should understand and have a clear discussion on it. And I think prime example is you take HDFC Bank, we went on cash flow, and you see our delinquency, and you see our provisioning, and you see our earning. So going forward, very clearly, we need strong public sector because they do account for 65%. We need the banks to be able to lend. We need them to be able to take care of technology. And today, with technology, it is, whether it's credit risk, whether it's market risk, whether it is how you're going to lend, whether you're going to go into the interior at the right cost, whether you do clean. For instance, microfinance, we have very low NPAs. Our clean portfolio has ridiculously low NPAs because the people in semi-urban and rural, as well as the salaried fellows, are very good. So just to focus on security doesn't get you anywhere. So clearly going forward, the bank should be there, focused to be able to provide. Our credit to lending ratio is very low. If we want a 6 trillion economy, credit to GDP in semi-urban and rural India has to go from about 10 to 35%. Overall, we should reach the 60% level. I do believe that the tools technology has given can make it happen. We need to make sure that our governance is right both for the public sector, and they must have autonomy of management. They also probably need appropriate compensation for the specialized functions that come through. But I don't think the way it's being said that the banks will all hold it back. We got 6 lakh crores extra money.
Okay. Sir,
And so we have 18 months to solve this, but we've taken too long, and I think we should focus and solve it this time. I do believe it's easily solvable.
I think you said all what all I wanted to ask you, but a quick few things between now and budget, what people are discussing, and something on Reserve Bank of India's plate. One is this, the 15th January, the window closed for the feedback whether corporations should be allowed to float banks, that RBI paper. 15th January is over. Today is 19th, but I'm sure regulator will take a note what you say. That I want to know your view. Should we allow strong corporates to enter into banking? That's point number one. Point number two, corporations are that's one. Two is this the bad bank. Reserve Bank of India governor recently said that he would look into the idea if the idea comes on his table. So do you actually support that? And three is people are talking about that it's time to revisit the DFI, Development Financial Institution. These three structural issues, which will, of course, is a key to the banking infrastructure in India and future of banking. If you just quickly give your take.
So what was your first one, Tamal? The first one was what?
First one is should we allow large corporations? Should RBI allows large corporations?
And the second one, bad bank.
Second one, bad bank.
Third bank, DFI. Okay.
Yes.
Now, recognizing this is a democratic country, I am entitled to my view. So let me give you my views.
Yes, sir.
So the first one, very clearly, can we move back a bit? And I think in this country, we must learn to examine how successful we've been in the past. We have said, we will give it here, we will give it there, and then you had an ILFS, and you had a Yes Bank, and you had a Gelly, and you name it. So obviously, all this thinking was more in thought process rather than reality on the ground. So giving to individuals didn't work. Banking ownership with the public sector didn't work. So there is no harm trying it, and lots of countries, it's not one way or the other. I think 50-50. The developing countries, the money is mostly with the corporates. If you have a good corporate with good ethics and very strong regulations which technology allows, I think we will have, if we revamp and we understand that, I don't think there's any issue. Let me put it this way, that if you give it to an individual, it'll take 10 years before he can dent, because he has only that much money. Public sector, you're not going to give it to. So who are you going to give it to? But we need more banks and money going out into the system if we want to achieve our 6 trillion economy. So my view, good corporates that have good ethics, I don't see why they would bugger up their brand. So is that clear enough?
Yes, bad bank. Your opinion.
On a bad bank, again, I don't think you need a bad bank, because if you get a bad bank, what will happen is, at what price will the assets to be transferred? Where are they going to get the liabilities from? And where are they going to get the expertise from? Foreign funding, unless they know exactly what the benefit they will get, will not come in, and they will not come in across the whole. But if they can get funding and they can solve this, but rather than that, why not see the experience of what Citibank and JP Morgan and everybody did in the US when Top came in? They set up a remedial management unit within the banks, reporting to a director that reported to the bank with very clear goals and a quarterly review. And here, probably, all you need is a little more coordination between the banks, and you can solve this. So I'd much rather go with the remedial unit with some supervision and coordination by the RBI and the Ministry of Finance. Bad bank will again push this whole problem into a 3-4 year resolution time frame. I think we should set a resolution time for ourselves for about a year. Coming to DFHI, I think we've had, I don't think we should repeat the experience of the past. If they know where to get their liabilities from, they can look at a DFHI. If they don't know where to get their liabilities from, and if they're going to give SLR, CRR concessions, I think the banks can fulfill that role.
Okay, good. I think you said everything. Tell me, Mr. Booth, I would say the opinion is divided across the line. 50% feel that the bankers are risk averse. They're not giving money. They're not giving credit. And the other rest of it, the other half says, no, they're not risk averse. They are prudent. They were imprudent. They are giving loans, and the loans have done bad. And now they're being prudent. So don't blame them. So what do you think? What's your take? Are they risk averse, or have they become prudent? Why credit is not picking up in India? Like last few years, it continues to be now.
Two parts. If the GDP doesn't grow, should
I'm not
credit
talking
grow,
about.
Tamal?
I'm not talking about HDFC Bank. I'm not talking
Forget
about HDFC
HDFC
Bank.
Bank. HDFC
I'm talking
Bank
about
is
the
going
banking.
on market share. But if there's no growth in
I'm talking about
GDP, if there is
yeah.
limited growth in GDP, can bank credit grow?
Tell me. Okay. So
So
the
the
root of the
fact of the matter
problem.
is, when you looked at it and you look at what is called the semi-banks as well, when GDP was growing at 5%, you had inflation at 3%. Between the banks and what was lent by the finance companies and the mutual funds, the credit into the system was about 11%, which is fine. I can tell you next year, credit from the system will be 15%.
You mean the overall system?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's probably because of the base effect, right?
No. Don't laugh. Well, see, Tamal,
Okay.
you should know me by now. I give you the exact working. 5% GDP growth, 5% inflation. Always bank credit grows at 1.5 times nominal GDP.
Okay.
Okay, na 15.
Right, sir. Okay. You said it's a democracy, or you are entitled to your opinion.
And
so that
my view also is that no banker will let a good credit go.
Okay, we are coming to close. Maybe you have 2-3 minutes left. So, and you said it's a democracy, or you are entitled to your opinion. So, which is why I'm encouraged to ask you, who are the bankers currently you respect in India and overseas also?
I think JB Diamond's done a damn good job.
Yeah.
And sorry, I didn't get your question.
I said, who are the bankers? You are wasting time, but there's no stop clock. We can extend it by 30 seconds. So if you want, if you think that you can just pretend you have not heard me and the time is up, I say, "Koi stop clock nahi hai, sir." I'm saying, who are the? It's a democracy, or you are entitled to your opinion.
Respect is normally for people more experienced and running larger institutions than you. If you ask me, are there a lot of good, competent bankers that are coming up and will grow with experience? I think there are a lot of them there. But please recognize my age and my banking experience. So respect would be difficult. I think they're a very good, competent lot. Time will tell how well they use their competence.
You would like to name anybody? No, you're not.
अरे भैया name करके क्या करेगा?
Okay, कोई बात नहीं, sir. So we are coming to the last question, sir. 1994, I think. 1994 is more than 25 years back. That famous quote came from Bill Gates that we would definitely need bankers, but may not. We would definitely need banking, but may not need bankers. Now, as we moved into the new decade and post COVID, I would say not the post, it continues to be this in this pandemic era. Digitalization is moving at a rap speed, which Nandan Nilekani said what could have been done in a few years now is being doing now in few weeks. So in this context, again, the Bill Gates quote is doing rounds, and they said that if the bankers don't change, they will become dinosaurs. And they're also saying that you either become digital or die. So your last word on this.
Digital doesn't mean you don't need bankers. And let me tell you, there's a good book by Martin Fieldman which says, "Thank God we came late." Sometimes these technology fellows feel that, and I hate to say this for somebody so eminent, maybe I didn't understand his quote. Sometimes these technology fellows think that they run the world and everything works on technology. Technology is an enabler. Can technology create a business outside software and selling it to you in hardware? No. It can help me create a damn good business. So do I need to understand technology? Yes. So do bankers need to understand technology and what the customer needs and what the changes is? Yes. But if you think technology can do without banking, then you're going to get an atomic bomb in your face.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Puri. I think it was pretty interesting what we discussed. I don't want to waste our time because we already just reached 8:15, 8:16. It's good fun meeting. Essentially, the key takeaway from what you said is this: yes, technology is making a right stride.
And I also want to tell two more things, Tamal.
Yes, please go ahead.
I do believe that the world underestimated the capability of India. When the pandemic came and they saw 1 billion people overcrowded, they thought India was doomed, the Indian banking system was doomed. We've come out better than most. Our recovery is faster. Our new cases are lower than anybody in the world. Digitization that Prime Minister Modi put in paid off. It also provides for the future. I think we should all take a bow and not be self-flagellating all the time. We did a damn good job. We managed it well. So once in a while, rather than just taking hard pot shot at us, we did a good job. And anybody else, let's see how they couldn't manage a fully educated population, 1/10 our size. And everybody takes a pot shot at India. But what about the rest, man? If I start taking pot shots, they won't know where to run. So I'm proud of our country.
Okay, sir. So I would not repeat anything what we discussed. It was all fun. Now over to Radhika. Thank you, Mr. Puri. I think
Thank you.
whatever we wanted
Pleasure
to.
as always.
Yeah,
Kamal, you
Radhika.
always get me stuck where I can't say no to you.
Okay, thank you, Radhika. Yes, all yours.
Thank you so much for a really refreshing conversation. And I think it was a very good strategy on our part to have this session, which is probably the best session of the day, as the final one, and with such a great, critical and yet forward-looking conversation. There were some great ideas for the future of banking for India and for the world, I think. This session is recorded, and I think it'll be a very interesting resource. We will put this out on social media and other channels. And we ended, Mr. Puri ended on a really positive note. So we are happy to end this day today with that pat on our back. Thank you so much for that as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Radhika, for your kind
wonderful.
words.
Thank you so much, Mr. Puri. And
thank you.
Amal, thank you so much as always. Amazing facilitation and probing and questioning. With that, we come to the end of day one of the Inclusive Finance India Summit of this edition. We look forward to having you join us at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. We will start with 3 parallel tracks tomorrow, and we hope that you will find the one that interests you best to join us. So that's all for today. Good evening, have a good night, and look forward to welcoming you tomorrow morning. Thank you so much.